So we have our template. Now let's take a look at drip marketing. So we can create a drip marketing campaign either by clicking on drip marketing and selecting new from the actions button in the top right, or having created a template already, we can create a email marketing or a drip marketing campaign directly from this template. Again, under the actions button in the top right hand corner, so we're still in the template editor view, remember, we come down to create campaign. So create campaign using this email. And some basic information is required for a campaign. So first of all, we need to give it a name. So I'm just going to call it AMA demonstration, and I'm even going to spell that correctly. Subject line, so what would be the subject line of the campaign? Great news from Will. The next choice is, to whom do we send this campaign? So where it says select a list, it's effectively looking for an ACT group. So the drop-down menu there will present you a list of all your ACT groups. So they could be dynamic groups or they could be static groups. Doesn't really matter which. I'm going to select a test group that I created earlier on called Will's Test, which just includes a small number of contacts that all send an email to me, so I can use this for testing before I commit to the main campaign. So the from name, this is what appears in the from line. So that's important because when people are looking at your email in their inbox or a mobile device, they're presented with the from name before the email address. So important that that is going to resonate with them. And then the from email address, typically that will be set up to be your own domain. In mine, I've used a variety of different choices, but this would typically be the domain that you register with SwiftPage when you sign up for your Growth Suite and Act Marketing technology. So if the domain, in my case, is solutionscloud.co.uk, that would mean that I can send emails from any email address, providing the domain, the bit after the @ symbol, is solutionscloud.com. The reply to email address is where bounce backs and out-of-office auto replies are sent. So that's quite useful in that you might want it to appear to come from a controlled email address of the person, but maybe you use a separate mailbox to accommodate and receive automatic bounce backs. So having made those simple choices, if I click create, it takes me into the drip marketing screen and shows me the basic structure of a simple campaign. And a simple campaign it is. This one just has a single email. So every campaign within AMA has a start and an end. So these are mandatory components. It has to have a start, has to have an end, and then it could have any number of things occurring between start and end, with the most simple one being, as in this example, the broadcast of a single email. You'll notice that beneath start it says instant release. That means that the moment that I enable this campaign, it will start pushing emails out. But if I want to plan the campaign now for broadcast at another time, I can just click where it says instant release and I can change that to a predetermined time. So I could specify a date and time. If I want the email to go on Monday next week at 3 p.m. GMT, I can specify that within these settings here. Okay. So at the moment, as said, all it does is sends an email. So if I click on the email button, or the send email button, it allows me to make changes to that structure. So the changes might include go in to edit the content of the email. That's what we looked at previously, the template editor. So this just takes me back to the template editor. Or, under that drop-down list, a series of other options are available to me. So I'm starting by sending an email, but I could change the action type. So this green send an email is an action type, and the type of action is send email. But I could, if I wanted to, begin the campaign not by sending an email, but by looking at data within the database, querying a field value, for example. The other things that I could do is insert an action after. So perhaps what I want to do is send the initial email and then make what's called a decision as a conclusion to the email. So the decision would be look at whether a recipient opened an email or clicked an email link, for example, and if they did, then follow a certain pathway. If they didn't, follow on an alternative. So it might be if a recipient clicked a link in an email, that suggests that the email got through to their inbox, they were sufficiently interested enough in the from name and the subject line to open the email and read it, and having read it, they understood its context and were sufficiently interested to want to find out more about it, so they clicked on a hyperlink. So that's pretty big news actually in the world of email marketing. So it might be that if somebody clicks on a hyperlink, I want to schedule a follow-up call for one of my ACT users to give that prospect a ring. So insert action after, let's look at that option now. So insert action after, what is the action I want to insert after having sent the email? I could immediately send another email or wait 3 days and send another email, but I don't want to do that. I want to go into this decision state that I've just described, which is to query whether people responded positively to the previous email. So insert action after decision, click go. So it's going to say, what do you want the decision to be based on? Is it based on whether the recipient opened the email? Is it based on whether they clicked on something in the email? Is it based on a specific URL? So I can choose different pathways depending upon the specific URL that a recipient has clicked on. I'm sending this email to everybody in a list or an ACT group. I might want to base the decision on whether the recipient is in some alternative ACT group or not in another ACT group. Or moving back towards the top there, column layout value, I might want to look at a particular contact field. So if I've got a contact field in my database that says, let's say, the number of employees, maybe if I get a response from somebody who has more than 1,000 employees, I'd allocate that follow-up call to a senior account manager in my business. If they have less than 1,000 employees, I would do something else with it. So the action could be triggered by not only the response to the email, but also other conditions and characteristics of that contact within my ACT database. In this example, I'm going to base it on the click of a specific URL. So because I'm looking at a previous email, first of all, it wants to know which previous email to query. In our campaign, there was only one, the first one that we were sending out. And so in that particular email campaign, it's showing me all the hyperlinks that are used within that campaign. So pick the hyperlink and then click save. So I've added one condition. So the condition is, did they click on the link? As mentioned, if I wanted to treat them differently based on the company size, I might say, if they clicked on a link and they have more than 1,000 employees, do this. So down in the bottom here, under group actions, I can add a new condition. So the new condition is column value. Which column do I want to look at? Well, I want to look at the column value that is the number of employees. And if that is greater than 1,000, click save. I want them to pass down the yes branch. So the decision is based on, did they click on that particular link within the email, and have they got more than 1,000 employees? If they have, I want to schedule a follow-up action for one of my key account managers. I can give that decision a name just so I can recognize it at a glance. So greater than 1,000 employees, clicked, and then over under the actions, save and return. So here we go. I've got the structure is building. I instantly release the email, send the email. Beneath send email, it leads into my decision, but I'm going to change that from instant release to wait for a period of time. I'm going to give it 2 days. So wait 2 days to give people the opportunity to interact with the email before I make that decision based on whether they clicked or not. So down the right hand side, here's the yes branch. So those people that did click and do have more than 1,000 employees, I want to then schedule a follow-up action. So at the moment it says end under the yes branch. I want to change that. I don't want it to end. I want a follow-up action there. So click on end and change the action type from end to something else. Now it could be schedule a quick follow-up call, or it could lead into a further decision, ask other questions, or it could send an additional email. But I'm just going to leave it set at actions. Click on go. And then now I've said I want actions to occur. I can edit the actions to determine specifically what kind of action takes place. So again, they've clicked on the link, they've got more than 1,000 employees, what do I want to do? I can schedule an activity within the database for a user, I could create an opportunity within Act, I could add that contact to another drip marketing campaign, I could add that contact in Act to a group, I could update a contact field. So maybe I'm using the ID status field to determine whether they're a prospect, cold, warm or hot. So I could update that field to change the status to hot prospect, perhaps, if they've clicked on the link. There is separate from this, by the way, a scoring mechanism whereby we can automatically monitor the interactions that recipients have with our emails and build a score based on an algorithm. So a score would be a number-based system where it could build a number score and update a contact field with the result. A notification would be just send an email. So maybe I don't want to schedule an activity in Act, I want to send an email to the account manager to alert them to the fact that this person has clicked. For the purposes of this exercise, I'm just going to create an Act activity. Who's it going to be for? The account manager, or i.e. the record manager in Act of that person, or I can specify an individual if I want to always pick up those activities. What activity type? So these are the standard activity types, but you'd also be able to schedule your own custom activities if you've created custom activity types in Act. So what's it regarding? Whatever you want to put in there, and then you can append more details if you want to in the field below. So click on Save, the activity is created. I could add other actions as well, but for this exercise I'm just going to save and return. But if I wanted to, I could say schedule a call and update a field and send a follow-up email, etc. If they don't click on a link with more than 1,000 employees, end, so the campaign doesn't go any further for those contacts. There has to be an end at the end of every branch. So on this actions one that I've just created, I do have to go on there and insert an action after, end, so that there's a logical conclusion. And the purpose of this is that we know when a campaign is completed, or we know when a recipient is moving through the stages of a campaign when they've got to the end. So a fairly simple one, but hopefully that gives you some understanding, an idea of the logical controls and flow through the system. If I want to activate that campaign at this point, I just go up to the Actions button in the top right hand corner and click on Activate. Now that quite usefully gives me a checking area where I can look through each stage of the campaign to ensure that each one is correctly configured. If there's a problem with any of those, then it will have a red cross in here, and I can go in and update that stage of the campaign so that it's correct before I commit to the broadcast. So when all is good, activate campaign, and the email is on its way. At any time in the top right hand corner under Actions, I can check the campaign properties. There's a dashboard. If I click on dashboard now, there won't be much to see in this campaign because I've just sent it out. But this is where I'll be able to get a view of emails sent, delivered, number of opens, number of clicks. Now we've discussed this campaign in the context of almost like a one-off event where we send an email and then we check on the follow-ups. Many of the drip marketing campaigns that are used don't limit themselves to being a single event. They can be ongoing. So for example, it might be that within our system, whenever we add a new contact to our database that's a prospect, they're automatically added to a group, which feeds them into a drip marketing campaign that sends them an introductory email to welcome them to our business, monitors how they respond to that, and schedules follow-ups accordingly. So that's not a one-off event that happens just on a certain day at a certain time. It's invoked whenever a new contact is added to the database and it's ongoing. In those circumstances, under the Actions menu, you can see that it's possible to set up campaign list sync. So what that means is, if we enable it, there's constant synchronization going on between AMA and the group. So the AMA campaign is looking within the group to see if new people have been added and automatically feeding them through that funnel. Now, a further part of the configuration of group of campaign membership is such that I can include and exclude contacts based on their membership of other groups. So if you'll recall, when we set the campaign up, we decided that we wanted to send the email to everybody which was in a group called Will Test. But it might be that I want to send the campaign to people who are in other groups as well, or conversely, I might want to send it to everybody in a particular group unless they also appear in another group. It might be an opt-out group, or a group where we can contain people who are perhaps already customers, so they don't need to receive this kind of communication. It's up to you. But under the Actions menu in the top right, Inclusion Lists is where for this campaign I could add other groups that contacts are members of, which would prevent them from receiving this particular email campaign. So inclusion lists or exclusion lists can be added at any time. Well, I say at any time. If the campaign is live, they can't. So you would have to pause the campaign to go and edit those inclusion and exclusion lists. If you want to see which contacts are going to be a member of a campaign, taking into account their group memberships and the inclusion and exclusion list structure, then List Simulation will present you with a list of all the contacts that are going to receive a campaign that you've scheduled. To give you some idea of how the campaign dashboard can present you with feedback on campaign responses, I've loaded a campaign that we used previously, and under the Actions button, Campaign Dashboards gives me some statistical data around that campaign. So this particular one had 3 pathways, 3 broadcasts, and we can see the total campaign responses at the top of the screen, and then below that just a single path but 3 email broadcasts, so we can see the number of recipients that were targeted in each email, the number of emails that were delivered, the open count, the click count, etc. If we scroll down to the bottom, we can see further, more detailed information on opens and clicks over time. So there's some graphical data, and also there is plenty of text-based data as well. You'll notice that on the right-hand side, under this list of people who've opened and interacted with the email, is an export data button. Other means of reporting on ACT campaign data include the lookup by advanced query. So users of ACT will be familiar with the advanced query because it's also the component that's used to manage dynamic groups. So you'll notice within advanced query now, not only can you query the contact or opportunity entities, but campaign results is presented here as well. So if I wanted to find all those people in ACT who've responded to the ACT CRM event campaign by clicking a hyperlink, I could build a query to pull those people together. So campaign name includes ACT CRM event, add to list. Also in campaign results, clicks, let's say clicks greater than 2, add to list. I could also be very specific about the clicks. I could say which link they've clicked on, when they clicked, a variety of other characteristics of the email campaign can be queried as part of this process. So there are 19 contacts in my database who've interacted with that campaign in the way that I've described. The other means of recognising how effective the campaign has been is on an individual contact basis. So if I return to just the normal ACT interface and look at the contact screen, you'll notice that there's a campaign results tab presented within the screen. So the campaign results tab includes a line entry for every campaign that you've sent to the contact in view through ACT Marketing Automation. And in each case, we see the date of the sending of the email, the campaign name, the subject line and the sender that was used, the date of the last open and the number of opens, and then the click or the number of clicks, the date of the last click and the URL, the identity of the URL that was last clicked. And then over towards the right hand side, we've got bounced, unsubscribed, complained. So you can see here if any of those activities have taken place as well. So there's quite a rich view of interactions on an individual contact basis through graphs and charts within AMA, and also by using the advanced query within ACT to perform lookups, or you could create groups that gathered together contacts that had responded to AMA email marketing campaigns in a particular way.